I stand before you today, not angry but urgently concerned, not shaking my fists but raising my voice, not out of fear but out of deep, soul-stirring conviction, because I believe the battlefield we're ignoring is the very one where our future is being fought. Education is not just about facts, it is about formation. We don't just teach kids arithmetic and grammar, we shape their souls. And the tragedy? Most of us don't even realize it's happening. The enemy doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through curriculum. It slides in quietly, through well-meaning lesson plans and harmless textbooks. That's the deception. The battle for the next generation won't be won or lost with bullets and ballots. It will be won or lost in classrooms, in conversations, in subtle shifts of meaning that reshape the soul without a sound. Let me tell you what shook me to the core. C.S. Lewis, yes, the same man who gave us Narnia and Mere Christianity, once picked up an English textbook for school children. Just a simple little book, meant to teach proper writing and grammar. Nothing radical, nothing controversial, but as he read it, his heart sank. He saw what most would miss. Not a grammar guide, but a slow erosion of virtue, a slow boiling away of the soul. He called it the Green Book. That was his code name for it, to protect the authors. But make no mistake, he was sounding the alarm. In the opening pages of The Abolition of Man, Lewis lays bare the danger. He warns that this book, under the innocent disguise of education, was teaching students not how to think, but what to feel about truth, or worse, to not believe in truth at all. That's the danger. What seems harmless can hollow out values. The Green Book wasn't attacking Christianity, or morality, or beauty outright. It was simply redefining them as personal preferences. Instead of saying, "This waterfall is sublime," the book would teach a child to say, "I feel something when I see it." The difference: one points to an objective truth, the other traps you inside your feelings. And once value becomes just emotion, the ground shifts. Good and evil become opinion. Justice becomes taste, and truth becomes whatever sells in the moment. Wake up, church. Wake up, parents. Wake up, teachers and leaders. We are not just in a culture war, we are in a spiritual crisis. Not because evil is screaming louder, but because truth is being slowly dismantled behind the scenes, one textbook, one classroom, one careless curriculum at a time. I don't say this to scare you, but to wake you. I don't bring this up to shame us, but to summon us, to rise, to return, to reclaim the sacred duty we have to teach, not just brains, but hearts. If we don't intentionally shape their souls, the world will. And the world is not neutral. So I say again, we don't just teach kids facts, we shape souls. And if we don't teach them to value truth, to recognize beauty, to love what is good and hate what is evil, they will grow up unsure if such things even exist. Lewis saw the danger. He pointed at that little English textbook and said, "Here, this is where it begins. This is how they unmake man. Not by violence, but by silence, by subtle sabotage, by training students to believe that moral statements aren't about reality, they're just feelings. We cannot afford to let that slide by. Not in our homes, not in our churches, not in our schools, not on our watch. Because if not now, when? If not you, who?" Now, let me be clear. I don't believe most of this is happening because people are evil. In fact, the truly dangerous ideas don't usually come from wicked men. They come from well-meaning ones. That's what makes it all the more deceptive. C.S. Lewis knew this too. That's why, in The Abolition of Man, he chose not to name the authors of that little English textbook. He simply called them Gaius and Tisius. Not to ridicule, but to protect. Because even though their names were concealed, The error they taught had to be exposed. Gaius and Titius were likely good men, teachers, educators, doing what they believed was right, but even good men can carry bad ideas. Even honest educators can unknowingly pass along poison if they don't test the source. Lewis didn't accuse them of malice, he accused them of blindness, and we must do the same with compassion, but with truth. So what did they do wrong? They took something sacred value, meaning moral judgment, and stripped it down to nothing more than personal emotion. They quoted a famous story: a man sees a waterfall and says, "This is sublime." The authors explain that he's not really saying something about the waterfall, but merely about his own internal feelings. According to them, sublime doesn't describe the thing itself, it just means I have sublime feelings. Do you see it? That might seem like a subtle shift, but it is a catastrophic collapse of meaning. Because if that is true, then when someone says, "That is evil," all they're really saying is, "I feel bad." If someone says, "That is beautiful," they're not praising beauty, they're just reporting mood. Let's push it further because we must. If I say, "You are contemptible," and it only means I have contemptible feelings, then what power does morality really have? What weight does justice carry? None. It all becomes mist. This is the seduction of subjectivism. The idea that truth, real, solid, immovable truth, doesn't exist outside of our emotions. That beauty, honor, nobility, righteousness, sublimity are not real in themselves, but just projections of our passing moods. And friends, if everything is just emotion, then nothing matters. Nothing is right, nothing is wrong, nothing is worth fighting for, or dying for, or living for. This is not just intellectual fog, it is soul corrosion. Think of the young student, the schoolboy reading that passage. He's not analyzing deep philosophy, he's just doing his English homework. He's not told explicitly that values are lies. He's simply shown that what looks like truth is really just personal taste. And Lewis warns us, that boy will walk away with an assumption buried in his soul, one that will surface years later when it counts the most. When he's asked to stand for justice, or beauty, or the gospel, something deep in him will whisper, "These things are just feelings, and feelings don't bind you." This isn't education, it's disarmament. Stripping our young people of the moral weapons they need to stand against the lies of the world. And the terrifying part is, Gaius and Titius never meant to do it. They thought they were being clever, modern, intellectual. But in reducing values to feelings, they pulled the rug out from under all moral judgment. And this is where I cry out, not in anger, but in agony. Because I see it happening in our world today. I see the fruit of that teaching now grown into full trees, bearing a harvest of moral confusion. And unless we turn, unless we teach our children that truth is real and values are grounded in something greater than emotion, we will raise up a generation who cannot stand because they have nothing firm beneath their feet. So let me say it plainly. Values are not mood swings. Truth is not a preference. Good and evil are not opinions. They are rooted in the very character of God. And if we let subjectivism seduce our children, we are handing them over not to freedom, but to futility. Wake up. The battle is not coming. The battle is here. I need to speak plainly now, not with anger, but with a heavy heart. You see, the most dangerous teachings aren't always shouted from podiums or plastered across billboards. No, the most dangerous teachings are the ones you don't even realize are being taught. They slip in quietly, like a draft under a door. They don't demand attention, they just rearrange the furniture of your thinking while you're asleep. That's what C.S. Lewis saw in Gaius and Titius. He said it clearly, It is not a theory they put into his mind, but an assumption, which 10 years hence, its origin forgotten and its presence unconscious, will condition him to take one side in a controversy which he has never recognized as a controversy at all. Let that settle in. It's not just about what our children are taught, it's about what they're made to assume. Assumptions so quiet, so subtle, they become invisible. And yet, those very assumptions shape the direction of their lives. And here's the tragedy. The child doesn't even know it's happening. He thinks he's just doing English homework. He's reading a textbook that was handed to him by a trusted teacher. The words don't scream heresy or rebellion. They seem tidy, polished, even educational. But underneath the surface, the soul is being shaped, not by doctrine, not by dogma, but by default. That's the invisible curriculum. It's not just about what is said, but about what is implied. It's about what is left out. It's the erosion of conviction, drip by drip, not with a sledgehammer, but with a slow leak that hollows out the heart. And the worst part? Gaius and Titius don't even know they're doing it. They're not standing in a classroom shouting, "There is no truth." They don't need to. All they have to do is plant the idea that value, beauty, goodness, nobility is just emotion, just feeling, just personal taste. And the student, without even realizing it, begins to drift. He no longer recognizes truth as something objective, something to stand under, to honor, to obey. Instead, truth becomes something internal. Whatever I feel must be right. And when life hits him hard, and it will, he'll have no anchor, no compass, just the shifting sands of mood and cultural noise. And by the time his heart wakes up to the battle, the war has already been lost in his affections. Brothers and sisters, this should break us, because we're not just talking about a theory, we're talking about souls, about our children, about a generation raised in a world where conviction is mocked, where value is called bias, and where courage without roots is just noise in the wind. We must stop thinking of education as neutral. It never is. Every book, every lesson, every curriculum is either shaping the soul toward truth or eroding its capacity to even recognize it. This is why we must be watchful. This is why we must be intentional, because the heart of a child is tender, easily molded, and if we are not the ones shaping it, someone else will be. Someone already is. Lewis called it an anesthetic, and that's exactly what it is. A slow numbing of the moral nerves, until eventually we cannot feel what we ought to feel. We cannot love what we ought to love. And the voice of God, once clear, is muffled under layers of polite, modern, sanitized skepticism. So I plead with you as a parent, a pastor, a disciple of Jesus, don't sleep through this. Don't assume your children will figure it out. The seeds of unbelief are often sown before the child even knows what belief is. Wake up, watch the influencers, read the textbooks, guard their hearts, not because you're afraid, but because you love them too much to let the world shape their souls in your silence. There's a kind of education that leaves the head full but the heart empty. And that, my friends, is the greatest tragedy of all. When I read Lewis's words on the Green Book's treatment of literature, when I saw how Gaius and Titius dissected that cruise advertisement like it was a frog on a table, I didn't just shake my head, I grieved. Because this wasn't just a bad literary critique. This was a slow, surgical removal of wonder. Here's what they did. They took a cheesy little advertisement, a romantic pitch about sailing the Western Ocean, where Sir Francis Drake once ventured, bringing home a treasure of golden hours and glowing colors, and instead of teaching students why it was poorly written by comparing it to better writing, they decided to mock the very emotion it tried to evoke. Oh yes, they pointed out that the boat doesn't really go where Drake went. They laughed off the metaphorical treasure. They sniffed at the sentiment like it was something shameful. Job done, lesson taught. But here's the thing. They didn't teach literature, they taught cynicism. A good teacher, a wise guide might have said, Now, class, let's compare this advertisement to Dr. Johnson's meditation on the Western Isles, where he said, "A man is little to be envied, whose patriotism would not grow stronger on the plains of Marathon, or whose piety would not be stirred among the ruins of Iona." They might have brought in Wordsworth, describing how the weight of London's antiquity settled on his soul with beauty and power. They might have said, "Here is how you express awe. Here is how you stir the human heart with truth and elegance. And here is where this ad falls short." But they didn't. They didn't put good and bad side by side. They didn't show the difference between cheap sentiment and genuine emotion. No, they simply debunked. They tore down. They laughed. They dismissed. And that's the problem. You cannot just teach children what not to feel. You must teach them what is worth feeling. This is not just about grammar. This is about the soul. Because when you strip beauty from the classroom, when you teach children to sneer instead of stand in awe, when you mock the noble impulse rather than refine it, you are not educating. You are emptying. You are leaving behind a heart that feels nothing, believes nothing, reveres nothing. And when that happens, the next time a child stands before the ocean, he won't feel the thrill of Drake's adventure or the hush of God's grandeur. He'll only remember the smirk of Gaius and Titius saying, "It's just water. Don't be so dramatic. God help us." You see, this is bigger than literature. This is the soul's formation. The loss of reverence is not just bad for poetry, it's deadly for worship. If we cannot teach our children to honor beauty in writing, how will they honor beauty in holiness? If we mock the grandeur of a sailing voyage, how will they stand with open mouths and beating hearts before the glory of the cross? We must understand beauty is not extra. Beauty is essential. It awakens something in us. It whispers of Eden. It points toward heaven. It draws the soul out of numbness and into awe. But when education becomes cold and clinical, when it teaches children to scoff instead of sing, we're not raising thinkers. We're raising skeptics with no compass and no wonder. So here's the call. Restore reverence in the classroom, in the home, in the church. Show them Johnson and Wordsworth, not just because they write well, but because they teach us to feel rightly, to tremble at the vast, to honor the noble, to rejoice in the good, because the ultimate tragedy is not that a child misses a literary device. The ultimate tragedy is that a child misses glory. Let me speak plainly. We are living in a time that demands virtue, but despises the source of it. We call for courage, but we laugh at conviction. We beg for justice, but we silence the voice of truth. And then we wonder, why is the world falling apart? I'll tell you why. Because we've raised a generation of men without chests. Yes, you heard me right. That's the phrase Lewis used not as an insult, but as a warning. A prophetic picture of what happens when you sever the connection between the heart and the mind, between the intellect and the spirit, between thinking and loving rightly. We've educated the head, we've indulged the belly, but we've starved the chest. And the chest, Lewis says, is the indispensable liaison officer between cerebral man and visceral man. It's the place where honor lives, where right affections are trained, where the conscience finds its voice not just through logic, but through love. Without it, we become monsters of contradiction, highly educated, but morally blind, intelligent, but directionless, capable of building rockets to the stars, yet unable to build a life worth living. Isn't that what we're seeing? Leaders with Ivy League degrees who can't speak truth. Scientists who split atoms but can't tell right from wrong. influencers with millions of followers who have nothing to say that lifts a soul. This is what happens when you remove the chest. You get brilliance with no boundaries, appetite with no allegiance, ideas with no integrity. And friends, the world cannot survive that. I know this sounds strong. I know it stings. But I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to awaken you. We are watching the slow collapse of character in a culture that has traded depth for data. We have more information than any generation in history, but we have no formation. And that's the real crisis. Because hear me, you cannot demand virtue from a heart you've trained to mock it. You cannot reap righteousness where you've sown cynicism. Lewis said it best. We laugh at honor and are shocked to find traitors in our midst. We castrate and bid the geldings be fruitful. And my God, isn't that what we've done? We stripped the soul of reverence. We taught children to sneer at nobility. We told them values were just feelings. Then we act surprised when they live without purpose or restraint. Church, wake up. This is not just a cultural issue, it's a spiritual war. The chest is not just a poetic idea. It's the battleground of the heart. It's where truth must be loved, not just understood. It's where beauty must be honored, not just noticed. It's where goodness must be cherished, not just debated. If we lose the chest, we lose the man. So I ask you, what kind of men and women are we raising? What kind of disciples are we making? Are we shaping thinkers who feel, feelers who reason, people whose moral compass isn't swayed by trend, but tethered to truth? Because this world doesn't just need brains, it needs bold hearts. This world doesn't just need appetite, it needs anchored conviction. And that kind of soul doesn't happen by accident. It is formed slowly, daily in the fires of truth and the beauty of holiness. Let's stop raising men without chests. Let's start raising men and women of substance, who know what is true, who feel what is good, and who live what is righteous. Because God didn't call us to be clever. He called us to be courageous. There is a rhythm to the universe, a moral gravity, a weight of meaning that pulses through creation like blood through the body. You may not see it with your eyes, but your soul knows it's there. You feel it when you witness a sacrificial act. You sense it when beauty moves you to tears. You recognize it instinctively when injustice breaks your heart. That is the Tao. C.S. Lewis calls it the Tao, not just to sound scholarly, but to name the heartbeat of what every great civilization has known deep down. There is a real, objective, moral order. It's not a Western idea. It's not Christian branding. It is woven into the very fabric of existence. The Tao is what the Christian calls God's law, what Confucius called the way, what Plato called the good, what the Hindu called Rita, the cosmic order. What Aristotle meant when he said that education is to teach a child to like what he ought. This is not just philosophy, this is worship. Because if there is a Tao, then this universe is not an accident. It's a creation. It's not a blank canvas waiting for you to invent meaning. It's a masterpiece, already imbued with purpose, and your life is a brushstroke within it. You were made to live in alignment with that purpose. Lewis described the Tao as the set of basic assumptions that all cultures at their best have honored: courage, justice, honor, loyalty, humility, compassion, honesty. These are not feelings. They are real virtues etched into the design of our souls. And here's the miracle. Across time, across language, across continents, we all seem to know it. It's as if God left his fingerprints everywhere. Plato said it was about ordo amoris, the ordering of our loves. That virtue is not just what we love, but how we love, and in what proportion. Augustine agreed. He said, "Sin is disordered love. We love good things in the wrong order, That's how we fall. Confucius taught that harmony with the way begins by honoring your father and mother. Aristotle said the good man doesn't just know what is right, he desires what is right. The Hindu sages believed that the Rita, the divine order, was not only written in the cosmos, but reflected in right living. Do you see it? Every ancient tradition, at its noblest point, was reaching for the same truth. But here's the staggering revelation. In Jesus Christ, the Tao put on flesh. The law became a person. The Logos stepped into time. The order behind the stars walked among us with sand in his sandals. And when Christ walked this earth, he didn't just teach the Tao, he embodied it. He lived perfectly aligned with God's heart. He showed us what it meant to love justice and walk humbly. He reordered our disordered loves. He didn't say, live by your feelings. He said, follow me. Friend, this is not theory. This is reality. This is gospel. There is a way that seems right to man, but it leads to death. But Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Not a way, not a truth. The way, the truth, the life. That's why the Tao matters. Because the universe is not morally neutral, and neither are you. You were made in the image of a holy God. You were made to love what is truly good, not just what feels good. You were made to walk in the light, not wander in the fog of relativism. So don't let this world tell you that truth is just preference, that right and wrong are just perspectives, that beauty is just opinion, number. The heavens declare the glory of God. The stars shout his craftsmanship. The cross declares his justice and his mercy. The Tao is not dead. The Tao is alive, and he has a name, Jesus. There's a battle raging in the classroom, and it's not just over what's being taught. It's about how it's being taught and why. Let me speak plainly. Education is no longer about growing souls. It's about programming minds. And that should terrify us. C.S. Lewis saw it coming like a prophet, shouting from the watchtower. He warned that we had exchanged propagation, the art of forming men for propaganda, the art of manipulating them, and we didn't even realize it. The old education, God-fearing education, was like a gardener. It planted seeds of virtue. It tilled the soil of character. It nurtured truth, beauty, and goodness. It said, this is courage. This is honor. This is what it means to be human. Aspire to it. But today, we've replaced the gardener with a poultry keeper fatting chickens in a cage, not to live, but to be consumed. Education has become mechanical, impersonal, and worst of all, soulless. Instead of saying, let's raise men and women of wisdom, we say, let's make them useful. Instead of cultivating the heart, we train the hand. Instead of lighting a fire, we install a system. And somewhere along the way, we lost the soul. Let me tell you what's at stake. When we remove the teaching of virtue, when we stop telling children what is right and wrong, what is beautiful and ugly, what is noble and shameful, we don't create neutral thinkers. We create spiritually hollow people. We didn't just stop teaching values. We started teaching that values don't exist. And friend, that's not education. That's indoctrination. It's not hard to see. We've got schools that can churn out engineers, but not men of honor. We've got graduates who can argue their way through an ethics class, but can't tell you why they should be kind to a stranger. They've read Shakespeare, but they've been taught to mock him. They've studied the Psalms, but only as poetry, not as worship. That's not wisdom. That's sterile intellect, without a compass. Lewis put it this way: the old education initiated students into the great tradition of truth. The new education merely conditions them. You feel the difference, don't you? One says, come, become fully human. The other says, conform and be useful. But our children were not made to be tools. They were made to be images of God. So I say this with urgency and compassion. We must return to propagation. We must raise up teachers who are gardeners again. Pastors, parents, mentors, you are not just filling minds. You are shaping eternal souls. Teach them courage. Teach them sacrifice. Teach them wonder. Teach them that there is such a thing as goodness, and that it's worth giving your life for. Because if we fail here, if we let propaganda take the place of propagation, then we will have educated a generation who can build empires, but can't love. They will know how to run systems, but not how to run toward the hurting. They will be clever and efficient and well-dressed in their emptiness, but they will be men without chests. And so I call on every Christian educator, every parent, every preacher, every soul with breath in their lungs. Grow men, shape hearts, propagate virtue, because the heart of education is not knowledge, it's character. And character doesn't come from programming, it comes from planting, nurturing, and believing that God Himself is still the master gardener. And the harvest is ready. Let me be honest with you. I've met some of the smartest people in the world. Brilliant thinkers, persuasive speakers, reasoners without peer, and yet they crumble under pressure. Why? Because intellect alone can't carry a soul through the storm. C.S. Lewis said it plainly, "It is not syllogisms that will keep a man at his post in the third hour of the bombardment." That kind of courage doesn't come from the head, it comes from the chest, from the heart that has been trained to feel rightly and stand firmly. Let me say it like this. Logic can give you a reason to act, but only love can make you move. You can know the right thing and still not do it. You can see the path of truth and still sit paralyzed on the side of the road, because knowledge without passion is sterile. It's like a map with no legs. Listen, friend, we were never meant to run on intellect alone. The will is moved by desire, and that desire must be rightly shaped, trained, not crushed, not ignored, but channeled. Lewis called it the problem of men, without chests, creatures with brains and appetites, but no middle space, no moral compass, no strength of conviction. You know what that produces? A generation that knows what's right but can't bring itself to do it. Let me take it deeper. Faith without feeling is brittle. You can believe all the right doctrines, quote all the right verses, and still drift into numbness. You can sit in a pew with your Bible open and your heart asleep. And the opposite is also true. Feeling without faith is chaos. You can chase emotion after emotion, always looking for the next spiritual high, but without truth as your anchor, you'll be tossed by every wave. We need both. We need a heart that burns and a mind that believes. We need passion that's anchored in truth, and truth that's fueled by passion. Think of a soldier in battle. His mind may tell him the objective. His orders are clear. But when the bullets fly and the ground shakes, what keeps him there? It's not information, it's conviction. It's love for his brothers, for his cause, for his country. And so it is with us. When you face the fire, when you stand in front of betrayal, injustice, heartbreak, fear it won't be your theology degree that saves you. It'll be the love of Christ burning in your chest. It'll be the Spirit reminding you that He is worth it all. That's what moves the feet. That's what steadies the hand. So hear me. Don't just train your mind, ignite your heart. Don't just study doctrine, let it set you on fire. Don't just recite creeds, live them with tears and blood and joy. Because when truth takes root in a heart full of love, that's when the world changes. It's not the most educated who stand in the fire. It's the most surrendered. It's not the smartest who change the world. It's the most passionate, the most obedient, the most alive. So I ask you today, is your heart awake? Is your soul burning with the love of Christ? Don't be a man with a head full of truth and a heart that's cold. Be a man or woman with a chest ablaze, because intellect without emotion is powerless, but a mind rooted in truth and a heart lit with holy fire that's unstoppable. I've said a lot in this message. I've traced ideas, named the dangers, mourned what we've lost. But I didn't come here just to diagnose a disease. I came to call for a resurrection, because it's not too late. The abolition of man is not destiny. It's a warning, and by the grace of God, it can be reversed. But hear me, this won't happen by accident. It won't happen by merely tweaking curriculum or adding another Bible class. It starts in the heart. It starts in you. It starts when we stop asking, what can we teach? And start asking, who are we shaping? I'm looking you in the eye now, church leaders, parents, teachers, pastors, mentors, and I'm asking you, will you help rebuild the chess generation? Will you teach not just minds but souls? Will you disciple not just behavior but desire? Will you speak not only of truth but of love so holy, so righteous, it brings a man to his knees in worship? Because that's what this generation needs. They don't need more facts. They need formation. They don't need more lectures. They need fire. You and I, we have a choice. We can keep producing hollow men, empty shells chasing applause and possessions, numb to beauty, deaf to the divine, or we can call forth men and women with courage, tenderness, honor, and a heart that trembles before God. The Tao must be restored, the sacred order, the reality that there is such a thing as good, such a thing as evil. That right is not a matter of preference, but truth that demands response. We cannot keep raising up students who can argue theology, but cannot feel the grief of God over a broken world. So I say, today read Scripture not to argue, but to feel what God feels, and then teach others the same. Teach your children to love what is lovely, to stand for what is right, to weep over what is wrong. Raise them to live with chests where reason and desire are united under the lordship of Christ. It's not just possible, it's necessary, because the soul-starving worldview is already here. It's in our entertainment, it's in our textbooks, it's in the water our kids are swimming in. But it doesn't have to win. Not if we fight back with love. Not if we refuse to produce machines and instead raise up saints. Not if we stop measuring success by grades and start measuring by character. The abolition of man will not stand not if we lovingly restore the sentient heart of human nature. We must rebuild. We must revive. We must remember what it means to be truly human, made in the image of God, destined for glory, designed not just to think, but to feel, to love, to worship. So I close this message with a challenge, a commission. Choose one young soul, just one. Teach them to love rightly. Teach them to walk humbly. Teach them not just the word, but the wonder of the word. And in doing so, you will strike a blow against the darkness. You will raise a man with a chest. You will help rebuild a world worth living in. So rise up, now, today, before another soul goes hollow, before another heart is lost. This is our moment. This is our mission. Let's rebuild the chess generation, one heart at a time.